Welcome back to X6. Of the 8 main bosses, there are only 3 left. One of them has an actually pretty good stage, one of them has an okayish stage, and one of them has a stage that I never ever want to play again so long as I live. So to make this go by a little bit faster, I'm going to equip the Ultimate Buster part. You might remember from X5 what this does. It causes all of your shots to become fully charged charge shots, and that goes for special weapons as well. However, it adds a bit of cooldown to the Buster, so it's probably not as fast as using Quick Charge, which is the part that will have the amount of time it takes to charge up a charge shot. However, I could not find Quick Charge, so I'm going with Ultimate Buster, which, interestingly, you get from a Reploid named Keiji. Perhaps a reference to Keiji Inafune, it's not exactly appropriate in my opinion. Anyways, first up is Rainy Turtloid stage, which has a gimmick involving rain, which will remind you of either Wire Sponge's stage from X2 or Toadman's stage from Mega Man 4, one of the two. This light show that's going on is a result of Infinity Maginian's Nightmare Effect. It's probably the worst one. Well, actually, it doesn't directly damage you, it just makes the visibility very poor, but nonetheless, it is very annoying, especially in a situation where you have to find these tiny little objects and destroy them, because the weather control device that you're meant to destroy is protected by a barrier, and you have to destroy all of the little transmitters to get rid of the barrier. Fortunately, this is not as frustrating as it could have been, because in between each area, you have all of your health refilled by a little device that you just stand on and it refills all of your health. So that's very courteous of the developers. Especially considering that this stage is actually filled with some of the most annoying enemies in the game, and not just the nightmares either. Those big robots, they're very defensive. You can't hit them while they've got their fist up. No part of them is able to be damaged while they raise their fist, apparently. And they fire very annoying missiles and have an annoying ground earthquake attack thing. So yeah, it's nice of them to restore all of your health. It's like they actually thought they should give the player some kind of a concession in exchange for dealing with a potentially very annoying gimmick. So that makes the stage, at least tolerable. Maybe your opinion on the gimmick and how fun it actually is different from mine. Either way, I can actually get through this stage very consistently, so it's cool with me. Although, thinking about it now, this stage is actually very lengthy, and the portal to the secondary area is hidden in the very last part of the stage. So it would be very annoying if you're trying to collect all the items, and the secondary area actually does have a very important part. It's the Hyper Dash part, which makes you able to dash faster and will make your dash jumps cover a lot more distance. That's actually going to be very important for one of the Fortress bosses. Of course, I'm not going to get it, so I'm not going to be playing that boss with that part. But when you see that boss and what they do on Xtreme mode, you're gonna know why that part is actually pretty important for that boss. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Fortress levels. So I'm really just filling some dead air while I get through a not that interesting part of the level, just collecting some more Nightmare Souls and destroying all of the transmitters along the way. Woe betide the player who misses one of the transmitters and has to backtrack for it when they get to the end, but they're so in the way in the horizontal parts of the stage that it's not that likely that you'll miss one. Searching for them in an area like this, however, would be much more difficult, especially with a light show going on. Now, there are actually hidden little corners past all of those spiked tunnels with hidden items in them, and the portal, as I mentioned. One of the pieces of the shadow armor is actually somewhere in here as well, up and to my right, I think. But anyways, I'm not bothering with any of that. You can't really... Well, you could get them with the Falcon armor, I think, but it would be very risky since you have to dash through the spikes with your invincibility frames from getting hit. So, not something I'm going after. We're up to the boss, who is also a bit lengthy. He's a very defensive boss, being a giant turtle. By the way, giant turtles, totally awesome, and I love fighting them in whatever Mega Man game they happen to be in. There's one in the Zero series as well, and he's pretty awesome. Alright, Rainy Turtloid. The gimmick with him is that protective shell negates all damage from this side. In order to get past it, you have to destroy the 2 green gems, which will regenerate after a while. However, you can see that I am using the charged ground dash, and that's damaging him just fine. That's because it's hitting him in the head. He's vulnerable to damage from that side of him. So that's one way of getting past the shield if you don't want to deal with it. And now I'm using the charged Magma blade just to experiment. It looked like that the ground dash was not hitting the green gems at all. So I'm using the Magma blade instead. This is the charge variant. You can actually spam it and just flood the screen in these firebirds. It's actually really nice. and fun to use. So once the 2 green gems are out of the way, he's vulnerable to any of your weapons, including charge shots. So this fight can take a while because he has a number of attacks where he just rolls around the screen and you can't hit the green gems while he's in that state. You can damage him if the green gems are gone, but the green gems themselves can't be damaged that way. And here you're going to see an attack that is exclusive to Extreme mode. It's, not very interesting. So there's a version of that attack that can happen on normal mode where he just floods the screen in Meteor Rain barrages. That's what his attack is called. But on Extreme mode, it's just such a nerfed attack compared to the regular version. I don't really get what happened. I guess they didn't finish polishing his Extreme mode version. But whatever. Rainy Turtloid is down, and we get a weapon that for X is not really that good, but for Zero, the technique he gets from Rainy Turtloid is infamous because it was bugged in the non-patched version of the game. Using it in a very specific way would cause Zero to become invincible from any and all damage sources until he enters a boss door. You better believe players were willing to abuse that in the vanilla version of the game. So now that I think about it, that was the closest thing this game has to a water level. There's really no water levels in this game. Anyways, I'm moving on to an ice level now, so expect ice physics. Those are always a treat. You'll notice that I selected the incomplete blade armor for this stage. I really need the leg upgrade for the blade armor in order to get through this stage because there is an obstacle that becomes very, very annoying and difficult on Extreme mode, so you'll see what happens when I get there. Of course, that also means that I have no body armor, so I'm going to be taking a lot more damage. Luckily, if you just fly through this opening part of this stage, you can get through with very little damage. I actually like the way this stage is designed. I'm not sure if this is meant to be possible, but you'll notice that there are these ice boulders that are spawning, but I'm moving past them faster than they can spawn, so I'm getting past most of them, except for this part, and there is an enemy placed in a very annoying position, in just the right spot, in order to be able to hit me in my one safe zone. Anyways, once you're past that, you have a bunch of ice chunks falling from the ceiling, and this stage really expects you to learn that by jumping you can actually negate any friction caused by the ice, so you won't slip and slide if you land after a jump. This enemy is in a very annoying position as well. Somebody forgot to put their Pokemon back in their Pokeballs. No, really, you see those spheres in the background? What else could those be? Is this like the frozen aftermath of some disaster in the Kanto region or something? Anyways, this area right here is only accessible if Blaze Heatnix's Nightmare effect is active. You can pick up a Reploid and a Heart Tank right there. However, it's going to make the rest of the stage very annoying because those flaming fireballs are random and they do a lot of damage when you don't have armor. So this is going to be very annoying. Like, you have to get through more of those randomly spawning ice chunks, and they're paired with random fireballs as well, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, probably just take the hit and get past using your invincibility frames. I really don't know what else you would do. So I kinda like this stage until I played it on Extreme mode, especially because of this area right here. This is the pit of falling blocks, and you can bypass it very easily with the Blade Armor's dash move. You can see that it allows you to dash in any direction, up, down, left, right, whatever you want. And that's helpful for getting through this area. Like, in spite of the completely random ice blocks dropping. On normal mode, the blocks drop way slower, and you can actually, like, dodge them and get out of the way before they hit you, and you're far less likely to be trapped in an unsalvageable situation like I was in the previous video. So that's what I wanted the incompleted blade armor for, to bypass this one obstacle, as much as I could anyways. So it's not a pure Falcon armor only playthrough, but I think the lack of any body armor to reduce damage makes up for my using this semi-broken dashing ability. I mean, it bypasses some obstacles, but it's not crazy broken. Anyways, you can see what the idea of this area is, and they decided to put a Reploid that you have to rescue in order to get one of the parts, and you will potentially take a bit of damage in rescuing that one Reploid. The things I do for saving lives. Of course, who wouldn't want to save the lives of a bunch of robot dogs? All of the Reploids in this stage are robot dogs for some reason. I think they did that to match the boss of this area because Blizzard Wolfang is obviously a wolf, but then again, the Reploids in Commander Yamark's stage weren't insects, so who knows what's up with that. Speaking of Wolfang, he's probably the worst investigator of the entire bunch. I don't know why they programmed him this way, but he has a very bad tendency of either doing the same thing over and over again or dashing around like a maniac. And in this particular fight, he decided to use this same attack over and over again. Just shoot out this one rock, it splits into a couple of chunks that can hurt you. I got caught one time, but as you can see, I am just draining all of his health, and by the time he decides to go into his desperation move, he's already gone. Yeah. I kind of wish you could see more of his attacks because he does legit have some attacks that are difficult to dodge, but I just drained so much of his life without even taking that much damage myself. I took one hit. Wow. You know, I'm starting to think that the guy who programmed all of these Reploids wasn't as skilled as we might have thought. Oh, and before I forget, all of the Reploids in that stage are named after characters from other Capcom games. Like, I just rescued Ken and Chun-Li, and there's also a Reploid named Moringa, as a reference to Morrigan, I guess, from Darkstalkers? I don't know. Some of those references, though, are references to really obscure Capcom games, so that got me to check out a couple more of their works. So that's nice. So there's only one stage left, and I am going to regret playing it with its nightmare effect active. There is only one possible nightmare effect for this stage, so once it's active, it's there to stay. Metal Shark Player. I recall liking the stage at one point, but after playing it on extreme mode, I have to disagree with anyone who ever praises this stage. I am so sorry, but it is just... let's just say it's chock full of trial and error, and even if you could theoretically beat this on your very first attempt, if you were skilled enough, just the fact that one minor slip-up, like that, for example, I don't even know what happened. One minor slip-up can cause you to go back to the beginning of a segment that requires you to very much plan your moves ahead of time, and it can end up taking just a very long time to clear this. Back when I played this for the very first time, I could not beat this stage, and I had to bypass it by going through those portals to skip to the end game, which left me without an actually pretty important weapon, so you'll see what that means later. So yes, this is the only instance in which you are allowed to use a ride armor, and it's best used to just leave the ride armor there and continue on without it, because that will cause the compressor at the top of the screen to not be able to fall as far. Unfortunately, that's the only... well, there is one other segment with ride armor, but it's in the secondary area that you have to find the portal to get to. And finding that portal is a nightmare in and of itself. So on to the real meat of the stage. I'm going to be using a lot of charged special weapons. You'll actually get to see all of them in this stage, I think. So what's very, very annoying about this stage is that it asks you to dash through some very dangerous sections without getting hit, because if you get hit, you're going to suffer hit stun, and it's very likely that the compressor will use that amount of time to crush you and kill you instantly. And very annoyingly, on extreme mode, they just love placing enemies in spots where you are very likely to get hit and get crushed. Like, if you get hit by that nightmare, for example, you're going to get pushed back and then get crushed by the metal thing. And there's also a lot of Meteors. Nice to see the Meteors again, but they're all in areas that you're very unlikely to be able to get around them unless you're very nimble with your fingers. And we have another section coming up where it's very easy to get crushed because you can get stuck between the ground and the ceiling that's about to hit you. Yeah, I'm using the charged ground dash again. You can see that it kind of freezes time. I don't know what's up with that. I don't know why it freezes time, but it does go through walls and it can hit enemies through walls, so that's nice. And now I'm going to use the charged Meteor Rain. This thing is worthless. It is way too random. It doesn't hit what you want it to. You can hit something when the thing goes up, but yeah, it's just way too random to make use of. By the way, I've gone this entire game without mentioning something that the patch does. You notice that the Nightmare Souls shrink and gradually disappear, right? Well, if they disappear completely in the vanilla version of the game, the Nightmare actually respawns. So imagine how annoying it is that not only do you have this incredibly difficult enemy that the game spams constantly, if you don't pick up their souls in time, then they actually come back. And that would be extremely annoying for this segment right here, because they placed a nightmare just barely off screen, and you might think to just rush in and then destroy it so that the path is clear, but the thing is, if it goes off screen, then it actually gets all of its health back, and if you don't collect the soul, then it's going to come back again. That is the worst possible position for an enemy. And it turns out that the solution, I'm going to try a couple of things with the charge the MR option here. It turns out that the solution is to just, as soon as the area is open, you dash through, you take the hit, and then you just rush past as quickly as possible. And I know that doesn't sound plausible at all, but I'll eventually do it. Like, I just did it right here. That's how you're supposed to do it. Jeez, that nightmare is not there on extreme mode, so on the normal mode, it's a lot more reasonable. The secondary area, by the way, is just off to the left of where the first teleporter was. This is the main path to the boss. And look at what they're doing now! All of the above combined with a conveyor belt, and eventually you will see the nightmare effect from Blizzard Wolfang's stage. It covers parts of the ground in ice. How nice and cool, am I right? So yes, you get to deal with the slippery floor on top of everything else. Remember, if you get crushed by the compressor, it is back to the beginning of the area for you, and you have to do all of this again. No checkpoints in the middle of the compressed areas. As soon as the compressor disappears, that's how you know you've reached a checkpoint. I mean, it's just too much, okay? It's way too demanding on the player. Now, if you had right armor, you would be immune to getting crushed, and in the secondary area, they do give you right armor on top of a bunch of other messy stuff. Like it's actually an auto-scroller, the secondary area, and to even break into that area, you have to have something to pass through a large gap on the way to the armor piece and the teleporter. If you do not have something like the Blade Armor's dash, for example, then you would just be stuck because the checkpoint is right after the path split. Also, this is what Blizzard Wolfang's charged weapon does. It's completely useless. It breaks the ice, but you're already past the ice by the time you've broken it. So anyways, that path through the secondary area, one of the points in X6 where you can get stuck permanently and have to just lose all your lives and go back to the beginning of the stage if you do not have the correct equipment when you come in. Very, very bad. I think the patch does something with that area, but I haven't checked it out yet, so I don't know for sure. Anyways, want to add spikes to everything else? Yeah, let's just add spikes while we're at it. It wasn't enough that getting crushed could kill you. Now you've got to deal with getting impaled. Like, this is something that you would find in I Wanna Be the Guy or something, right? Like, it's just so crazy. Also, fire can't melt ice, apparently. That would have made it possible to actually break the ice before you had already crossed it. But yeah, I'm doing a lot of complaining. Oh, by the way, this is a nice area. I slipped and fell, and I had to do the whole thing over again. And remember, if I game over... Well, actually... Oh! Isn't this just the most beautifully placed Reploid, by the way? There's almost nothing you can do to get in there. I'm sure there's a way to rescue him, but since he's still there, even in the patched version, that means he was carrying a power-up part, and if this were the vanilla game, I would have just lost it permanently. So I hope it was a heart tank or something relatively unimportant. Anyways, mini-boss time. Oh, I should mention that in the patch, that Reploid will respawn, so I would have another chance at it if I decided to just go through the entire stage again. Anyways, this mini-boss is incredibly annoying. I'm going to try to get past him without dying, but I had so little health at the end of this. Luckily, there was a checkpoint right before this mini-boss. Or I should say that the mini-boss is himself a checkpoint. So, thank goodness, I don't have to do all of that conveyor belt stuff again. But I am on 1 life remaining, so I'm taking 0 chances with a boss. I am not using only the Buster against him. I'll do that in the boss refights, because those are always inevitable, right? So one thing that I haven't mentioned about this patch is that for all the quality of life changes that it makes, for all the good stuff it does, it did one thing that, in my opinion, is really stupid. If you get a game over in the patch, odds are that it will send you back to the beginning of the stage instead of just to the checkpoint like in the vanilla game. Really, you guys? This is X6. Do you really want to punish the players that badly? Of course, you start with 4 lives now instead of 2, so they probably figure that a bigger punishment is far more appropriate, especially because the Reploids don't give you extra lives anymore either. But seriously, there is still some stuff in X6, even with all of the patches and tweaks and all of that, there are still some really, really unfair segments in this game. I don't think any amount of patching can fix them. And it would be very, very frustrating if I got sent back to the beginning of the Fortress levels, but I'll save that for later. We have a boss to kill, and I'm just going to be spamming the charged ray arrow, because why not, right? I'll use only the Buster against him on the refights at the end of the game. So don't worry about that. By the way, I went this entire stage without mentioning Metal Shark Player. Dumbest name ever, right? Well, it's been speculated that they actually meant to call him Metal Shark Prayer, because his gimmick is he can actually revive previously defeated Mavericks to attack you from previous Mega Man X games. He can summon Magma Centipede, and on Extreme mode he will very often summon Blast Hornet and Sting Chameleon. So that's pretty interesting. We are in a recycle lab after all, so that's actually a really cool boss gimmick. Shame you never get to see it, because even in the refights where I use only the Buster, he gets destroyed really quickly. He's got a really excellent weapon, though, so that's good. We can at least use that in the Fortress stages, which are coming up next. Oh boy. I'm gonna enjoy those so much.